Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the African American Genealogical Society of Fort Wayne. I am your host for the day for this particular session. My name is Roberta Ridley, Chairwoman of the Society. We're going to be focusing our research on a rather unique, out-of-the-box research. We're going to be looking at fraternal organizations and genealogy. We had a program on Ancestors and Answers, our monthly genealogy talk show, where we focused specifically on the Phi Alpha fraternity and our local chapter here in Fort Wayne. And that local chapter that we talked about was the Theta, Upsilon, Lambda chapter. And we're going to have one of our guests from our program to join us today. And we're going to talk about some information that has been shared and discussed, presented by Mr. James Morgan III as well. And we're going to hopefully guide you to some information that you yourself can take up the torch and start looking to see if maybe you've missed something by not looking at these records. So keep your pens out, your pencils. Make sure you notate your questions. I am not a sorority lady. I don't have a lot of fraternal organization membership in my family in particular, but then that may be because I don't know that they were in that organization. And that might be the case with you. So that's why we're doing this. And shortly we'll be joined by a historian from the local chapter, Dr. Miles Standish Edwards, PhD, and we're going to see what he can do to help you to do some of the research that you need to do. And as I said, I'm going to share information from Mr. James R. Morgan III, who is a bit of an expert in this field as well. Some of you may have been fortunate enough to join in on his presentation earlier, or shall I say towards the end of last year, where he shared a lot of information, and he has given permission for me to continue to share that with you, as you may not have been present for that presentation. So let's get started. I am going to look at, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to chime in on all of these things as we go along. But one of the things that I wanted to share with you folks is, first of all, the Divine Nine. This is the, and I think that we're going to be able to show some cover information as we go through on these books and move kind of slowly so that you can notate them as well as maybe even come up with questions. The Divine Nine, these are the African American fraternal and sorority organizations that have been in existence historically here in these United States as well as abroad. And Phi Alpha is the first collegiate African American organization. And that's where we're going to focus today. But I do want you to be aware of these other ones because you want to approach them the same way to try to get the information that you may need. So let's start off. Oh, I might have jumped the gun a little bit. Let's keep it real. There's another organization that I want to mention first and foremost. And the reason for me mentioning it is because it is the first benevolent noted organization, Sigma Pi Phi. And Sigma Pi Phi is an organization that came into existence as a benevolent group, doing quite a bit for the community, organizing to help people with all sorts of issues, African American families, as far as jobs, homes, burials, things of that nature. And their history is very deep as far as a fraternal organization. I wanted to recognize that because that's a book that you probably, they have a history book that you might want to look at that may lead you in some direction that we might not talk about directly today. And then came Phi Alpha, the first fraternal organization that had a collegiate affiliation. And I'm going to allow, because if you weren't able to view the Ancestors and Answers program from this past Wednesday, which was the 12th. We want you to be aware of the history of Alpha Phi Alpha and what fraternal organizations do, why they were organized. And joining us, as I stated earlier, would be Dr. Miles. Dr. Miles Edwards, are you available, sir?
I am.
I thank you once again. Most appreciated for you to take a Saturday afternoon in your illustrious retirement to join us to share this information with our viewers. And as I said, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about the history of Alpha Phi Alpha. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Although Sigma Pi Phi was a Greek letter organization, it was made up of community individuals and not, it wasn't a collegiate organization, where Alpha Phi Alpha was the first collegiate fraternity belonging to the Pan-Hellenic League for individuals who were in college. And there are 9 African American Greek organizations, 4 are female sororities, and 5 are male fraternities. My particular fraternity is Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, founded December the 6th, 1906, at Ithaca, New York, at Cornell University. Our local chapter, Theta, Upsilon, Lambda, which is a graduate chapter, was founded January the 6th, 1966, by 11 gentlemen in the community. And these community members were they're all deceased now, and these community members were individuals that those of us who live in Fort Wayne possibly may remember. But quickly, I'll tell you the founders of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity on the whole. And these members are called our jewels. Our founding members are called our 7 jewels. And these members are as follows: our brother William Brawley, brother William Archavis, brother Andrew Dotson, brother James Epps, brother James Graham, brother Clarence Haynes, brother Carol Jordan, brother Huey Pearson, brother Robert Stanton, brother William H. Watson, and brother James Yerger. And they were founded to provide service to the community of Fort Wayne, Indiana. And in 2016, we celebrated our 50th anniversary here in Fort Wayne. And what the organization has done over the years, it has provided scholarships for worthy individuals that we feel who needed assistance in paying tuition, buying books, and doing whatever else is possibly needed when going to college. We have provided male mentoring programs. We have been involved with the March of Dimes. We've been involved in the past with the Scott Kroger Cancer Day. And we've also provided a leadership summit, which used to be held at Indiana University, Purdue University at Fort Wayne. And we've also done Alpha Time, which was a tutorial service, which was held at Bunch Elementary School and Lakeside Middle School. And we also did the Botillion. This is like the young ladies' cotillion, but for several years we did the Botillion, and we also participated in the Jerry Lewis March of Dimes telethon that used to be held on WFFT Fox Television. And we also were involved in voting registration in the city. And every year there have been individuals that have, in the old days, like I'm really old, I've only been a member for going since December of 1973. That's 40 plus years, almost 50 years. In the old days, what we did sometimes when individuals needed help in paying for rent, or individuals needed food, or they needed help in paying utilities, we assisted them in that. We also, every year, we've provided Christmas baskets, Thanksgiving baskets to help feed needy families. We also in the past had paired with the Indiana Black Expo Fort Wayne chapter in providing a Thanksgiving meal for individuals, for the entire community of Fort Wayne who wanted to come. And these have been held in various locations around the city of Fort Wayne. And we also have adopted families where we helped buy clothing, provided food, and helped buy school supplies for children, and they're to attend to some of their needs, and toys for them. So these are just some of the programs that this fraternity has started in Fort Wayne.
Well, that's a nice introduction as to what the local chapter of Phi Alpha has contributed. We did discuss about the focus of the community towards the community from your fraternity in the program the other day. And yet and still, what we want to know and what we have, what we're trying to bring to the surface here is information outside of the box for genealogy research. Because the organization has been in play since 1906, and yes, it was your fraternity in particular was focused on camaraderie, support, some other support areas as far as education, housing, and things of that nature on the collegiate level. Yet and still, there's an outreach to the community. And we're going to talk about, you did talk about that briefly, but then there's the question that our researchers have as to what they can discover if they're doing family research, and if whether or not they have members of their family that were possibly pledges to any of these fraternities and sororities. And we certainly don't expect for you to speak for every fraternity and sorority. We do not, make that perfectly clear to everyone. You did indicate that from time to time, there was a necessity to help the community members with housing, utility bills, food, things of that nature. Would the records of your local chapters, per se, have include this information? And would a person be able to request that from the local chapter?
We try to keep as thorough records as we possibly can keep. And if you were able to contact the fraternity, our archivist would go into the annals, if you will, of records and would check to see who your family member was, and would let you know if you knew for sure that he was a member of the Phi Alpha fraternity in Fort Wayne. And if he moved away, then we would refer you to our general headquarters, which is in Baltimore, Maryland. And then here in Fort Wayne, we would bring up the records that we have, and we would give you whatever records you might be needing. We have records of when the person was initiated or came into the fraternity, and records if a person passed away when they entered the Omega chapter. And the Omega chapter is a chapter of deceased brothers that have passed on.
So making that clear to our listeners, they would be a Alpha Phi Alpha Omega status.
Right, if they passed on. Right, that's the chapter for deceased brothers.
Okay.
That's when you enter the Omega chapter, because Alpha and Omega is biblical, and Alpha is the beginning and Alpha is the end. And so the Omega chapter is the very last chapter that, upon your passing away, that's the chapter you would be entered into.
Am I to understand that is the case with all of the fraternal organizations and sororities?
Right. They may have a different name for the chapter when someone passes away, but this is a name that was established in the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. When a brother passes away, he then enters upon the Alpha chapter.
Okay. All right. Now, on the program the other day, in case people haven't had a chance, you referred rather heartily to a couple of books that were informative, I guess. It gives a little bit of history, may even lead someone to a path that they could research. One moment, please.
There are two particular books that would give the history of and the offices of the national offices of the fraternities and sororities that belong to the Pan-Hellenic League of the Nine. The first book is called The Elite Eight, and that was the first book that came out. And that book came out in the 1960s and to the early 70s. And then the second book is called The Divine Nine. And this book came out after another fraternity who was of the African American community was added to the Pan-Hellenic League. And then there's a book on the history of Alpha Phi Alpha. Is called Jewels, Jewels, and it's the story of the founding of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. And it's the second edition, and it's the Alpha hashtag history project, and it's by Brother Darius Jerome Gordon, and Gordon is spelled Gordine. And there's also a history book called The History of Alpha Phi Alpha, a development in college life, and it's by Charles H. Wesley, Brother Charles H. Wesley. And it's a continuous history book from the very beginning of 1906, and it continually it's added. Information is added to the history book on a regular basis. It's almost like a living history book, if you will, because every 2-3 years, a new edition comes out with more material. And there's also a directory of all the men who are members of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, and that comes out about every 5 years. And it'll give the brother's name, the addresses, if there's a spouse, the children, the degrees in which the brother holds, and if there are any other or fraternal organizations such as the Masons, etc., that the brother may be a member of, and it'll give the institutions in which the brother may have gotten their degrees from, and it will also give where the brother worked or has retired from.
Now, is this a book is this a publication that the general public can access?
Yes, the general public can access it. I don't know if our library has a copy of that.
And repeat the title again, please.
It's a directory of Phi Alpha fraternity.
So for people who might want to jump on that rather quickly, then we want to make sure they get a chance to notate that. Okay.
And with the directory of the Phi Alpha fraternity, it might be good maybe if the local library doesn't have it, perhaps a fraternity or the fraternity could possibly donate a book to the genealogy department of Allen County Public Library.
Sounds like a good request right there. And I will bring it to the director's attention to see if I don't find it here, then they can also put in a request for it, because it is an excellent, and you say that it's updated every year?
Like every 2 years, every 3 years.
Okay, all right. Well, I hope that gives somebody a chance to jump out on a record that may be missing. Let's talk a little bit in past. I mean, that's kind of, not kind of, it is an excellent source for somebody that may be still kind of stumbling around, but knew that one fact that they had pledged at some point. But going backwards, we've talked about benevolent organizations. You and I have talked about benevolent organizations versus fraternal organizations. And the fraternal organizations versus benevolent, and records that talk about burials, in particular, the death of a person that may not be able to be located as far as public records are concerned. We had a conversation briefly about that the other day. And when fraternal organizations take on the responsibility and how that all kind of got started, would you want to share a little bit with me on that, about your awareness?
Sure. Many of those organizations, such as Masons and the Shriners, and I can't, some of the ones that wear the sashes and the fezzes, and I can't, there's several of them that are there. And these organizations started to help individuals. People of African descent had difficulty in the days when you think about it, just coming out of slavery, just moving to the north to find better, good-paying jobs, and they didn't have a lot of money, and people die every day, and so very often we didn't cremate in those days because we just had a fear of cremation. I remember, and this is off the record, but I remember hearing an older person say, "Oh no, I don't want to be cremated, or I can't be cremated. I don't want to die twice or be burned twice." And I said, that's interesting. But these fraternal organizations and some of these benevolent organizations came up with insurance policies, if you will. They weren't exactly an insurance policies like a New York Life or many of the other ones that we might have. They were policies where people paid into a fund, and they might collect a nickel a week or a dime every 2 weeks or a quarter once a month if they had it. And this money would go into a pool. And when a person passed away, a person who was given a decent funeral, if you will, they were given a decent burial. A casket would be provided, a dressing gown or dressing suit would be provided for that individual, and so that the undertaker could do a very good job, and the family would not be embarrassed. And this helped with burying people, because nowadays I've been to funerals where they've taken up a collection, and because families had no burial insurances right now in this day and age. And so this was a way of people coming together and helping their own.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I also want to add, in case I missed it, but this was kind of a common practice throughout the southern part of the country, was it not?
It was. It was. And sometimes in the north, an example, my aunt who passed away in 1994, well, her husband was a Mason, and when he passed away, my aunt received several times a year. They sent her a widow's check from his organization, which he was a member of, and they did this to all widows whose husband was a member of their fraternal organization, Masons, and she received a check. But it started in the South, and many of the people that brought these same ideas and these same procedures to the North when they moved from the South. If they came from Virginia, Kentucky, Alabama, or Mississippi, or Georgia, and when they settled in northern cities such as Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Indianapolis, they brought these same scenarios to the cities in which they moved to.
Okay, good stuff, good stuff. So keep in mind, viewers, that this is not on our end, a perfected presentation of go here, go there, pull this up, look at that. I think it's kind of fresh for many of us. Clearly, Mr. James Morgan, let me say that again. James R. Morgan III has dwelled into this and done some extensive research and presentation. And we recently had the pleasure of him being here doing a presentation for Allen County Public Library as well. His handout information, which he has given permission for us to share, should anyone like to receive it, puts an emphasis on fraternal organizations, shall I say, fraternalism and genealogy. And one of the comments that he made in his opening, to explain what is a fraternal organization, and he says that as a whole, fraternal organizations came into existence as a means of creating social welfare programs at a time when government agencies were not as involved in this field as they are today. And I'm going to stop right there. There's a lot of other explanation that comes along with it. And he talks about the different types of fraternal organizations: social and burial societies, benevolent service clubs, ethnic culture groups, trade unions, mystical religious groups, political and criminal. Just
Right.
I would like to say that as he has given permission to share this information, should you wish a copy of this 4-page handout to be forwarded to you, then put it in the chat and we'll see to it that you get a copy of it. One of the things that he includes in this that I want you to be aware of is a suggested reading list. And I don't know that we have that. Do we have that available? We do have that available to share with you on the screen. And you can copy that, or again, it'll be with the handout. But there's some reading material. And this is Dr. James R. Morgan III. And he also has some publications that, we'll talk about. I think it's on the reading. So this book here is addressing the Freemasons of Prince Hall, 200 years there. That's by Joseph A. Walks Jr. but James has provided an excellent list of information that would be available. This in the Company of Black Men by Dr. Craig S. Wilder. And please take a note of looking at this material because it may lead you where we may not in this brief presentation today. The next one that he talks about is Prince Hall Life and Legacy by Charles H. Wesley, a very renowned, his publications, Charles Wesley, quite useful, quite historic collection that this gentleman has offered on the fraternal organizations across the board. And again,
and Madam Chair, Charles H. Wesley, Brother Charles H. Wesley, is the author of The History of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, a development in college life. He's the author for the Alphas also.
Thank you very much, sir. And this is going to be, I think, good reading. Every now and then we have to stop tapping on the computer, looking for what it is that's going to magically appear for us. And we have to do a little homework. We have to do a little history. We have to do a little extra digging outside of the box. These are books that are going to help you, and I think will be most interesting to have you understand where you're going with it. The Alabama Knights of Pythias of North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, and Australia by Marilyn T. Peebles. That also is going to be a good one. A lot of times we don't think about that. We don't think of our ancestors as being individuals who did anything functional in South America, in Europe, in Asia, and Africa, and Australia. But we're everywhere. We are everywhere. Don't forget it. And these are international organizations. So that's one of the ones you might want to look at if you're like going, whatever happened to him? That might be the key. The next one that we have for him from his recommendation list is West African Secret Societies by F.W. Butt Thompson. And hey, who would have thought? West African secret societies. How does that connect with any of the other societies? What would you find out? Then the history of the Mosaic Templars of America, its founders and officials, A.E. Bush and P.L. Dorman. Take a note there. I won't go into much detail there. I think it kind of speaks for itself. And the next one, the history of the shrine, ancient Egyptian, Arabic order, nobles of the Mystic Shrine Incorporated, Prince Hall affiliated, a pillar of Black society, 1893 to 1993. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Dr. Edwards, you mentioned previously in conversation about was it the Shriners organization?
The Prince Hall?
Let's talk about Prince Hall for a quick minute. Go ahead.
The Prince Hall organization, although we think about it, many of us know about the Prince Hall, but they received their charter from Europe. And European Americans did not have a charter to the Prince Hall. And it was the Black Prince Hall organization in the United States who gave them their charter to get started. But I find it very interesting that after they were given the charter to start Prince Hall and the Shriners, etc., they were very prejudiced, if you will, toward the Prince Hall brothers, and just treated them very poorly. They did not treat them as fraternal organizations and an organization which they got their charter from in the United States. Had it not been for the Black Prince Hall members, the white Prince Hall chapters who went on to become other organizations would not have had a charter in this country.
Another note to be made in the history of African Americans in these United States. Thank you very much, sir. We had a couple other items. We want to talk about, of course, what's available at the Allen County Public Library. That's where we're based out of. So we always want to look at what's available to everyone that might help you along the way. One of the books that was recommended for me, and I hope we can get a good shot of this. I'm going to block out me and let you see this because we didn't get this one in time. And that's my fault, but you got it. This is the International Encyclopedia of Secret Societies and Fraternal Orders. Knights of Templar, Freemasons, International Order of Who, Chinese Triads, Mafia, African Alligator Societies, Druids, Serbian Black Hands, Order of Anti-Pope Noses, interesting, Hellfire Club, and the Croix Blanche University. Some interesting information here. This is a publication by Alan Axelrod. And so I hope you got a good shot of that. If you don't, let us know. We'll send it to you. Okay, that's one. And then we had another item that a couple other books that were recommended from the Allen County Public Library Genealogy Department. I think we have those on screen for you. Just a moment. Those are the ones I'm going to just straight out communicate with my ever so supportive and diligent secretary here in Guzzy Rogers. We're looking at the title Alpha Phi Alpha, A Legacy of Greatness and Demands of Transcendence. Did you not find that one from that I sent this morning? Okay, let's do that again. Alpha Phi Alpha, A Legacy of Greatness, The Demands of Transcendence. That is edited by Gregory S. Parks and Stefan M. Bradley. So if you're looking at Alpha Phi Alpha, that's something that you want to look at. I also want to give you a call number. A call number here on the shelf in the genealogy department is G as in George, C as in cat, 929.11, A as in apple, L as in Larry, 748, P as in Paul. We get that? There we go. There we go. And there she blows. Okay. Something you might want to look at and see if there's information in there that will take you to where you would like to go. And the second one from the genealogy department is a documentary account of Prince Hall and other Black fraternal orders. Let me do that one again. A documentary account of Prince Hall and other Black fraternal orders. That one is by Henry Wilson Coyle, C-O-I-L, Sr., Henry Wilson Coyle, Sr., and John McDuffie, M-A-C, capital D-U-F-F-I-E, Sherman. John McDuffie Sherman. Okay, that is on the shelf here in the genealogy department also. And the call number for that item is G as in George, C as in cat, 973.068, C as in cat, 665, D as in dog, O as in oat. Now, these are some reference materials to get you digging into it. And the purpose of all this information being shared is that out of the box research oftentimes does take a little finger work, eye work, brain work. And real hope that as you are searching beyond where you have already looked in the traditional records of census, vital records, things of that nature, that you're able to move beyond this and get out of the box and look to some of this organizational information to perhaps put some meat on the bones of the skeletons of the ancestors, to add to who they are, what they were involved in, and perhaps discover information that you haven't been able to discover, even when it comes down to where they died, when they died, how they got buried, because these organizations do provide some information to that end. When you receive the handout information from Mr. Morgan via your request to this chat for the presentation, you will find that there are some other resources for fraternal organizations and benevolent groups that will help you to do your research as well. There are other libraries that house information a little bit more uniquely to that end. That's on the handout, and I don't think we're going to have enough time to go through all of them, but he did talk about fraternal symbolism and standard practices. That's going to be the symbolism is going to come up in a future presentation, and I sure hope you stay tuned to look to that when we get a chance. Got a question here, hold on, please. Hold on just a second. Kick myself out. You're referring to the documentary account of Prince Hall and the other fraternal orders?
Yes, ma'am.
I would venture so. I have not had a chance to go through it thoroughly myself. And if you'll hold on, kind of hang in there, we'll respond to it via the chat at a later time. But I'm going to try to grab it real quick. Don't ask me why I don't have it in front of me right now. But I'm going to have somebody go get that, and we can maybe take a quick look at that before we close out on Zoom today, if that's all right with you.
There's
Yes,
another
thank
comment.
you. No rush, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, we have another question out there?
There's another comment in the chat about another book to add to the reading list is What a Mighty Power We Can Be, African American Fraternal Groups and the Struggle for Equality by Theta Scopel, Ariane Liazos, and Marshall Gans. That's a comment in the chat.
That's in the chat. Okay, and so we can share that. All right, that sounds like it might be a good hunt too. Thank you very much. Okay, I think some of the other things that came about, holdings, like I said, and when you get this handout, there's a list of Black fraternal organizations, the city and year that they were established. And then the resources for fraternal organization and benevolent society resources. I think I mentioned that before. The Wilbert M. Curtis, Texas Prince Hall Library and Museum. John Ellington Jr. Library in Washington, D.C. Tulane University Amistad Research Center in New Orleans. The Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture in New York, New York. The Columbus Black History Museum and Archives, Columbus, Georgia. And the Mosaic Templars Culture Center, Little Rock, Arkansas. The Iowa Masonic Library, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. There's a lot of information out there, people, that I didn't know about. If you knew about it, I hope you shared it with somebody, and we're going to try to keep on sharing. Are there any questions at this time about what I have talked about? I know it's a lot to take in without a lot of specifics, and Dr. Edwards is still online with us, and if you have a question specific to him, please feel free to let us know at this time. always wanting to share something that may not have been, something that people knew about. I'm just going to pop up here the screen here. This was the 38th anniversary of the Black and Gold Scholarship Ball. Everybody that goes to these types of things, you know that if you get a booklet like this, it's a keepsake. You better hold on to it, providing information about scholarships that individuals have received, organizational assistance that the fraternal chapter has provided locally and otherwise, with recognition to their ancestral founders and or leaders of those organizations. This was a great one that was a really great event and had a lot of information in it to be shared that is definitely going to be beneficial to someone doing their genealogy research that was affiliated with Phi Alpha, and that local chapter being the Theta Upsilon Lambda chapter.
And what year was that, Madam Chair?
That one was the 38th annual Black and Gold Ball, and I believe that date was March of 2016.
Okay, we've been having these balls since the spring of 1974.
Wow.
And there might be a couple that were not held, i.e. last year because of the pandemic that's going on. And we're not sure if there's going to be one this year. We would like to have one, but there's so many circumstances that are going on in the world right now, and we're trying to follow CDC guidelines and health guidelines from the state of Indiana if we should, congregate. And just a tidbit to throw in there, most of our physicians who were of African descent in the city of Fort Wayne were members of the Phi Alpha fraternity here in Fort Wayne. And another fantastic tidbit is that Dr. Martin Luther King spoke here in June of 1963, and Reverend Andrew Young, who was one of Dr. King's right-hand persons, he did his internship at Plymouth Congregational United Church of Christ Church, downtown Fort Wayne. That's cat-a-corner across the street from the Scottish Rite, which is now University of St. Francis Performing Arts Center.
Did not know that.
Yes.
Wow. Another learning experience at the table here. That is really, really awesome information to have shared. And you yourself had a little encouragement from Dr. King, didn't you?
I had the opportunity to meet Dr. King in June of 1963 when he was here in Fort Wayne, and my sister, Elaine Edwards Pruitt, a good friend of the family, Anita Jennings Dort, Carmen Wilson, and Vonnie Wilson, who were the daughters of Dr. Wilson's, and they were young ladies who counted the collection at the Scottish Rite Auditorium at that time when Dr. King spoke. And it was at the McKay Hall, the Fellowship Hall of First Presbyterian Church downtown on Wayne Street, and they were there for a reception. Well, there was a reception held after Dr. King's speaking, and they brought Dr. King over to meet the young ladies who counted the collection. I had never seen so much money in my life as a 12-year-old kid, and they had them in buckets that were the size of Kentucky Fried Chicken buckets, and they were just overflowing with money. And Dr. King turned away from them, and he said, "Who's this young man seated over here?" And my sister Elaine said, "Oh, that's nobody but my little brother Miles." And Dr. King walked over, and he introduced himself to me, and Dr. Abernathy, and several other people, and Mr. John Knuckles, who was a city councilman at that time. they said, Dr. King, we've got to hurry. We've got to catch a flight to leave. And he stood me up and shook my hand and patted me on my head with his left hand. And he told me to grow strong, and they whisked him off. And I didn't get to take a picture of him. And I had a Brownie Kodak camera, and my mother wouldn't let me take the camera because my sister's graduation was that night at the Coliseum in '63. And she said, here, I'm going to take that camera because you probably will lose it. And had she not taken it, I could have had a picture of Dr. King and possibly he and I together. But what was so interesting is that a few weeks later in August, the March of Washington took place. And I remember my mother and I were watching it in the living room, and thousands of people were at the mall at Washington in front of the Lincoln Memorial. And when he gave his speech, and my mother said, just think, all those thousands of people who are looking at that gentleman speak, they'll probably never ever get to meet him. And a few weeks ago, when he was right here in Fort Wayne, he walked over to you and introduced himself to you. And it didn't dawn on me till later on in years that, yeah, all these people who, they talk about Dr. King and they marched with Dr. King, but many of them never even got to meet him. But I'm just sitting there by myself, sitting where my sister told me to sit and not move. And Dr. King came over and introduced himself to me.
And then a star was born. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking time to join us, Dr. Edwards. For those of you who are still listening, and I hope you are, I failed to mention earlier that Dr. Miles S. Edwards, PhD, is a retired administrator for the Fort Wayne Community School System. He was born in Fort Wayne, and he is a lifetime member of Alpha Phi Alpha. And I'd like to think that maybe that blessing, so to speak, put him on a path that he was able to give back to the community for a lifetime. And as you can see, he is still doing that. And we hope that we'll be able to, you will be able to garner from some of the information that he has shared and be able to add some information and meet on those bones as we continue to give voice to the ancestors.
There are a couple of comments here. I asked if any people on the Zoom had ancestors who were involved in Black Fraternal Organizations, and it looks like Dr. Alfred Brothers has, and I'm not sure of the name, but it says BB. BB says, my great-grandfather was a member of the Black Mason organization out of St. Louis and was a resident and prominent member of the historic Bill community.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And it says there he was a Methodist pastor, and she would like to have more records on him and her great-grandmother.
Well, I think maybe we can do some gleaning through the information that's been provided. We'll definitely provide your information so that we can send you the handout from Mr. Morgan, which should lead you to some information. And I don't know if we can address anything beyond that, but let's stay in touch for loss of anything else, BB, so that we can see what we can do to help you. And if there's anything that Dr. Edwards can expound on, leading you to that direction, or Mr. James Morgan himself. Okay?
Thank you.
You're quite welcome, ma'am. And thank you for joining us. I see that we also have on deck Mrs. Irma Geis, who she's on the committee for the Martin Luther King Celebration Day that we have here locally. We've got some things going on with her. It's only appropriate that we would announce, of course, we want to acknowledge Dr. King's birthday celebration coming up this Monday. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring to the surface the information from Dr. Edwards, the connection that we have there. This Dr. King is, or he is, as Dr. Edwards mentioned earlier, Alpha Phi Alpha Omega status. So it only stands to reason that we would pull it all together in this presentation today. Happy birthday, happy heavenly birthday, Dr. King.
We'd also like to mention that we have events going on in February. Do you want to talk about those?
Actually, prepared. We have quite a bit going on in February.
Ms. Roberta, this is Irma Gist. May I speak for a second?
Of course, go ahead.
Yes, the MLK event has been postponed until April due to COVID. And if they need additional information, I put the operations manager, Larry Gist's name in the chat box.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
And we'll reach back out to you later for your role.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you very much. February schedule. We have some upcoming events that are both that are all public, I believe, at this point. And Madam Secretary, if I miss one, please pull my chain on that. But February the 5th, Saturday, we have a presentation to Purdue Fort Wayne University, individuals learning how to do genealogy. We will be doing that in person here at the Allen County Public Library Genealogy Department Discovery Center, as well as on Zoom. Do look to our page for specifics on that. Wednesday, February the 9th, our monthly Ancestors and Answers program. We'll be looking at slave narrative information, resources, sharing. Quite often, we have that problem of surnames, and we're going to try to bring forth some information about that for you as well. Thursday is our general meeting, February the 10th. That will be an extended follow-up on the slave narrative stories, resources, being able to get into some of the books here at the library. Please don't be confused to think that you're going to find all the things that you're looking for online, and they're not there. And also be aware that there's quite a bit that people are really trying to keep undercover, whether they admit it or not, okay? And we want to go further down the schedule to February the 17th. We will have part 3 of the African-American pioneers of Fort Wayne. We'll be doing that here from the Allen County Public Library. Again, that's part 3. We'll be focusing on a time period of 1944 to 1975, African-American situations that we'll be focusing on housing, education, medical history, military, the military time period. If I'm not mistaken, Dr. Brothers, if you would please help me on that one. The time period we're covering for the military is World War II. World War II to the Vietnam War.
We should also include, if you think about it, the Korean War.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. So please keep on top of it. Go to our Facebook page. Get yourself signed up for that. That's also going to be available through the Allen County Public Library genealogy events. So you can get signed up for that information. That's always been very informative and beneficial to everyone that has watched or been present. February 19th, we will have a workshop, research tools and workshop, research tips, tools and tips in that workshop. Dr. Brothers, that's your presentation, is it not?
That is correct. Putting the flesh and bones on the skeleton that you've developed for your ancestors.
And
telling the rest of the story.
Yeah, a lot more to it, and a whole lot of other things to look at other than fraternal organizations, okay? So as far as I know, I believe that is it for February. I think that's everything. If anything else is new added, it'll show up on the Facebook page. Are there any questions or comments at this time? All right. Well, I hope that it has been beneficial to somebody out there. And if it wasn't you, then you got somebody you can give it to. And again, my name is Roberta Ridley, Chairwoman of the African American Genealogical Society here at Fort Wayne. And we're coming to you live from the Allen County Public Library Genealogy Discovery Center. My special thanks to our secretary, Ngozi Rogers, who just remains to be dead on getting the information out there to you. And our historian in-house, Adrian Wells, who is also here to accompany. Dr. Brothers, thank you for joining in and continuing to support as you do. And to everyone out there, please continue to dig and dig deep in and out of the box to give that voice to your ancestors. I thank you so very much for joining us today.